Primo, please. What? Oh, Madonna Miseria. Why do you still continue to resist? Why? I need your help, huh? This is not just some guy. This is Louis Prima. He's famous.
Famous? Is he a good?
He's great.
People should come just for the food.
Oh, I know that.
They should come just for the food.
I know that. But they don't.
I saw at one point like somebody riding a 15-foot face at
my goodness.
First Point, Surf Rider Beach, Malibu, just classic. Like it could have been right out of Endless Summer. And then even the place where I surf, which is more protected and smaller, Sunset Point was huge. It was 10 to 12 feet. And then there's
Yikes.
Yeah, it was big. It was big. I mean, there were some waves I could have ridden, but there were people who were sort of in the more protected, like wrapping area. But every now and again, a big washout set like a big 10-foot set would come, and everybody would get like flushed out, and
yeah, totally.
And there was
totally
like
killed.
a traffic jam. And there was a traffic jam just from the surf. Like I would say half the surfers in LA were out, and then also thousands of spectators. Just like I have a photo of just like, hundreds of railbirds taking photos, like leaning against this one fence. And the waves were massive. I don't think I've ever seen clean waves that size in my life before.
That picture you sent, I was like, whoa, that is a very well-shaped wave. And knowing that it was, 10 to 15 feet tall, was like, oh my God, that's a lot.
The shape is beautiful, and it's a north swell, and most of the beaches are south-facing. So if you're thinking about it, they're wrapping at least 120 degrees, and they're being blocked by the Channel Islands. So like the original swell's like 50 feet, and then all of that, the Channel Islands and the wrapping is knocking it down to like 15 feet. And by the time it reaches the shore, it's just clean and beautiful. But if you get caught inside and you're not able to duck dive or turtle, you're going to be washing machined for 25, 30, 35 seconds, which is terrifying,
Yeah. I was just listening to I think it was a Huberman Lab podcast, and he was talking about doing some diving where they were doing like shark observations, and he was going to stay in the cage, but a lot of the people that he was going with were doing like cage exit and like swimming around with sharks and stuff like that. If you know how to do it, it's totally safe. And his they were breathing off of a line, not off of tanks.
Right.
And the line got like horribly kinked.
Oh no.
And he's like, well, that's fine. There's like rescue tanks here in the cage with me. Both tanks are empty.
Oh shit.
And so he was like, okay, I have to leave the tank. And he's like, he had never done the like swimming safely with sharks before.
Yeah.
And so he was like, all right, well, he's like, if I stay here, I'm going to drown. He's like, if I leave, I may drown or be eaten by a shark. But
or
if I stay here.
How deep is he?
He's not deep enough that you got to worry about the bends.
Okay, so all he's got to do is go up. He doesn't have to.
He's just got to go up
through the sharks.
Right. Through the sharks.
And in the right direction, which when you're below 30 feet under is really, you don't necessarily know which way is up,
And so he gets out of the cage and like another diver like sees that it like is like sort of realizes what's happening and swims over to him, and it took about 30 or 40 seconds. And he was like, that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it was a lot of time.
Yes.
But being underwater for 30 or 40 seconds is a very long time.
Well, and a lot of it is it's buildup of carbon dioxide. Because which creates that panic response, and you actually often have more air then you feel like you have, and freedivers learn to kind of ignore that and to actually sort of follow other body cues. And the more you surf, you sort of like, you're like, 10-second hold under. I didn't like that, but now I've done it. Wasn't terrible. Okay, now 15-second hold under. But you don't really want to go from like 10 to 30 without progressing.
I'm now thinking of like a particularly abusive surf camp where the instructor like does that for you. He's like, all right. Next up, I'm going to hold you under for 20 seconds and kind of thrash you around a little bit. I don't know. This is like, it's like a retired sergeant
teen sports movie.
One that is set in like 1993.
Should we get into it? Big night.
Yeah. I am. Boy, what a piece of work.
It's even better than to just spoil it. It's even better than I remember. And I remember it being very good. But there were things about it I hadn't noticed, and also, well, I mean, maybe should we just start with the recap?
Yeah, sure. Let's intro it. This is Stanley Tucci and Campbell Scott's 1996 movie, The Big Night. Not The Big Night, just Big Night.
Right, although the original screenplay was called The Big Night. So it begins, there's the first little shot you see is very intriguing. It's this young guy, played by Michael Anthony Cristiano, staring out at the bay, what we learn is a little New Jersey town. But then very quickly we're in a kitchen and we meet Secondo and Primo, two brothers who own and operate a small Italian restaurant. Primo is the chef. He has a hilariously large mustache, played by Tony Shalhoub. He is shy and brilliant. And Secondo, played by Stanley Tucci, is kind of the front man, the businessman. We also learn that Primo is attracted to this local businesswoman who is a flower lady, played by
Allison Janney, brilliant. And Secondo has a girlfriend, Phyllis, who he sort of seems ambivalent about. And the business is struggling. And so one of the things that happens very early on is Secondo goes to a neighboring business, Pascal's. Pascal, played amazingly by Ian Holm. Totally forgot that it was Ian Holm.
Yeah,
100% forgot it was Ian Holm.
Transformed himself. Yeah, he is not Bilbo Baggins. He's not a little Welsh man. He is an Italian.
He's not King Lear.
He's not King Lear. Absolutely brilliant. Kind of reminds me of Richard Dreyfuss's ability to kind of transform. Similar kind of little guy energy who can play sort of mousy but also play confident. So Pascal is connected and he operates a more successful but kind of more of a pandering restaurant. Primo doesn't like him. I should also say that early on we get this scene where Secondo is taking an order from a kind of typical customer who doesn't appreciate their authentic Roman Italian cuisine. And she's complaining about why there aren't any chunks of seafood in the risotto, and then she wants a side order of pasta, and there's a hilarious scene where Secondo goes and tries to get Primo to cook the side order of pasta, and Primo is incredibly upset about it because she's a Philistine. But anyway, this all sets up. The business is struggling. They ask Pascal for a loan. He says no, but he offers to do them a favor, which is to invite his friend, Louis Prima, over to the restaurant in a few days so that they can get some publicity from that.
Yeah. And Secondo says, "You do that for me?" And Pascal says, "Yeah, of course. It's the least that I can do. I want you guys to be successful." And we jump and I almost missed this in the film. He says something like next Saturday or next Friday or something like that.
And then it's Saturday.
Yeah. It's just like right away. We jump to the day of the action. And this whole kind of early middle part of the movie is about them preparing the meal. Primo's not really like on board yet. He's kind of like, oh, this is sort of your party, isn't it?
Partly because Secondo has not totally explained how this came about, because he
and
knows
how
that Primo doesn't
badly-
like Pascal. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or has not explained their financial situation, which is like they drain their bank account preparing for this meal. It's make or break.
Yeah. It's another Babette's Feast.
Right. It is very similar to Babette's Feast in certain respects.
But Secundo does kind of explain, without directly explaining to Primo, just how important this meal is. And that gets Secundo on board. That gets Primo on board. Secundo is kind of distracted by side errands. He goes off to secure the booze for the night. And we discover that Secundo is sleeping with Pascal's girlfriend, Gabriella. So
who, to be fair, is part of securing the booze for the evening. But this is an illicit affair, right? Like but neither Pascal or Phyllis know about this.
Exactly. Yeah. That brings us to the evening. There's a lot of preparation that's been going on, a lot of cooking, and guests start arriving. There's anticipation, there's cocktails. Secundo keeps delaying, hoping that Louis Prima will show up. And there's a whole bunch of fun. One of the guests starts lip syncing to Mambo Italiano, and there's a conga line. And finally, Secundo declares that they're going to eat, even though Louis Prima has not showed up. And as we expect, the meal is absolutely amazing. And then things begin to take a turn. Why don't you tell us what happens?
Well, and it's also worth noting that Alison Janney's character, the flower lady, shows up, and she and Primo really start courting in a overt way, even though Primo is very shy. So Primo's having a good trajectory up to this point. But basically, and I can't quite remember the order in which all of these things happen, but in a very short order, we learn first, Gabriella is sort of kissing and consoling Secondo, and Phyllis sees this and is heartbroken and runs out onto the beach and goes swimming, and she's very upset. And, she's been nothing but loyal and supportive all of this time, and is rightly upset at the betrayal. Gabriella is an interesting character here, but she kind of bullies Pascal into admitting what has happened, which is Louis Prima was never going to come. And we don't really know why right now, but he has to explain that to Primo, who he has really developed an affinity for in the course of the evening. And he kind of sheepishly shrugs and leaves. Everybody makes their way to the beach. Not everybody, but Primo and Secondo. Phyllis has a final confrontation, with Secondo, where she basically is like, I don't want to hear any more of your prevarications. I'm out of here. This is Minnie Driver, by the way, playing Phyllis wonderfully. This cast, oh my God. And then Secondo and Primo have a fight, down in the sand, wrestling, screaming at each other. Basically, it's the same tension we've seen all this time, which is that Primo doesn't want to compromise the art of his cooking, and he resents Secondo for trying to get him to compromise it. Secondo resents that Primo won't compromise for the sake of their business, and it all comes out. They have a nasty fight. It reaches the point where they're just kind of exhausted, and they're sort of laying there in the sand. And then Secondo kind of drags himself back to the restaurant. He goes inside, and it's empty, except for Pascal is playing the piano. And I'll let you take it from there.
Secondo is kind of like a little nonplussed. Why has Pascal returned? And says, "You ruined me." And why? And it turns out that Pascal has done it because he wants to put them out of business so that Primo, primarily, and Secundo, the naming convention right there is just...
I don't know. I don't think those are their actual names, right? I think those are their family nicknames. First son, second son. Older brother. It's like calling somebody big brother, little brother. But then I don't think we ever learn their actual names because everybody calls them Primo and Seco or Secondo.
Primo and Secundo.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's such a perfect moment where it just works. Cause I think Pascal says something like, well, and you too are obviously important, which, basically says that you are not important.
Right.
Secundo says that will never happen. Primo has something rare. You are nothing. And Pascal says, I'm a businessman. I'm anything at any time that I'm necessary to be. And he leaves.
And what do you think you are?
Yeah, it's just a real quite an exit line.
They both zing each other pretty effectively.
Yeah, I've got a question for you at the end about that. It is almost dawn by this point. We get the sense that, because we know that it's around 3 a.m. when the party is wrapping up, so it's probably around 4 now. And Secundo goes into the kitchen. And maybe it's a little while later. It does feel like a little time.
Like maybe
has passed.
He took a nap. Yeah, maybe he slept for an hour or two.
The light kind of suggests that maybe the sun is coming up. This shot is almost a perfect echo of our opening scene shot.
Yep.
And Cristiano is sleeping on the pass, and Secundo kind of wakes him up and asks him if he's hungry. And makes an omelet, and they eat some eggs and some bread. And Primo comes in, and he and Secundo kind of share a silent moment. And then Secundo makes a plate for Primo and puts some eggs on it and some bread, and they sit down, and Cristiano leaves to give them some privacy, and they each put one arm around the other, and it's over.
And roll the credits. Absolutely,
like
absolutely.
Choked up just like recapping it.
The two brothers, they're there together. Their bond is unbroken, even if other things are broken. Well, my first question for you is, okay, that's that morning. What happens the rest of that day? And probably more importantly, what happens to the loose ends? And I think we forgot to mention, Primo has gotten a job offer from his uncle back in Italy, back in Rome, which he is leaning towards taking. He wants Secondo to come with him. Secondo doesn't want to. Secondo wants to try to make the restaurant work. So what happens that day? Does Pascal feel guilty and offer them the loan after all? Does Secondo get back together with Phyllis? Do they find a way? Does the newspaper reporter write a review? There are a number of scenarios that could just salvage the restaurant, or maybe Primo goes back to Rome. What do you think happens to Primo and Secondo in their dream of owning a restaurant together in New Jersey and in the United States of America?
God, that's such a great question. We know that they only have $62 in their bank account when things are over. They probably don't have enough money to really run the place for a day. What happens that day?
There are no credit cards. This is like 1961 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and we know from an early scene that their credit with the bank is done.
They've maxed out their line of credit. Yep.
Yeah. And if they don't pay it back by the end of this month, that the bank is going to basically repossess the restaurant. What is going to happen? I think they probably have to close the restaurant. I think that is the next thing that occurs. Yeah, this is one of those questions about, like, do movies and books have an existence beyond the, like, bounds of their creation, which is like an endlessly interesting question. Like, what happens after the end of, I'm not going to bring up Star Wars because, like, we just keep learning what happens after the ends of things, and it's always not entertaining.
Right.
But Yeah, like, what happens at the end? I mean, we know that at the end of Gatsby, like, Nick goes back to the Midwest and sort of doesn't want anything to, like, happen anymore. And I'm sure Daisy and Tom kind of go on existing together, and poor Jay is dead.
But this movie ends on a more hopeful note than Gatsby, even if they are ruined. The final image is one of hope, right?
Yeah, it's one of, I don't know if it's one of hope, but it is one of unity. And that's hopeful.
Their relationship has not been broken. And right. and I think the very powerful moment is when Secondo says, my brother's never going to work for you, Pascal. What he has is rare. Yeah. And because in that moment, Secondo is basically choosing not to compromise anymore. Like essentially, right. Pascal has offered an out. Like, you can keep doing more or less what you're doing. Come work with me. We'll give you a job. And he's basically siding with Primo, and basically saying no. He's actually he's going back on the stance he's taken the entire film, which is we have to compromise, in order to make this work for the sake of practicalities. And in that moment, he says, no, we're not going to compromise. And so the two brothers end the film unified, but
in a way that they haven't been.
In a way they haven't been.
They come in and out of unity throughout
right.
the movie, but
they're always
at
close.
No point,
their love for each other and their closeness, and they're always kind of looking out for each other, even though they're always driving each other crazy throughout the film.
And ironically, this moment is probably the closest that they have been. Right. The entire film. So I don't know the particulars of what is going to happen, but I do know that they are going to work something out together.
Yeah.
Like, the story continues. Very, very hilariously, apparently a lot of people have this question. There are several fan fiction sequels of Big Night floating around out there. As I was digging around for trivia, I cannot tell you the number of I've written a screenplay sequel of this. And I was like, you are kidding me. Really?
Big day, Allison. Turns out Allison Janney has a fortune she's been sitting on, and decides to invest in a new restaurant and become a three-way partner. Or Pascal feels very guilty and says, you know what, fine, I'll be an equity partner. I'll underwrite your restaurant. I'm going to take a third of the profit, but you're in charge. It's now going to be, Pascal and Segundo and Primo, or And I mean, would you want to see that movie?
No. A sequel to this movie would be like a sequel called Talking with Godot. What
Godot had to say.
Right, yeah, exactly. Godot arrives, and that's just not the point. The point of this movie isn't, it's so interesting. This movie, the plot is important and what happens is important. And at the same time, it is not important. I mean, actually, it is pretty similar to Waiting for Godot. They're basically
and Babette's Feast.
Yeah. Two very close friends / family members who spend a lot of time toing and froing about all of this other stuff. But really, the point is the connection between Primo and Secundo, or Vladimir and Estragon.
And in the end, that is strengthened. And, my brain is doing the same thing those fan fiction people are doing as well. But I think ultimately it is it's a perfect ending. If we watch the movie where Allison Janney does have a fortune and invests, that would be fun too, But yeah, anyway, I guess the short answer to my question is basically you're saying it doesn't matter, or you don't want to know.
I do. I don't want to know. I don't want this. I want it to continue as. I want it to exist.
You want it to exist as it is, as in right. You want it to live in the place of ambiguity.
Yeah, the resonances of it. It's like a poem.
Yeah.
Like you want those reverberation. The pleasure is the reverberation it leaves behind, not the fulfillment. It's
Right.
like ending on a seventh chord or something like that, which is like
many
sort of
more.
love. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting choice of. I mean, that is that is a seventh.
I think it's a seventh. I don't know. That was what instinctively came to mind. It sounds seventh in barbershop
Seventh-y.
to me. Yeah.
Totally.
Da-da-da-da.
Well, I've got a reading.
Yeah, shall we do that?
I want. Yeah. And this is sort of the third or fourth scene. Like they've closed down the restaurant for the night. They're about to go home. Secundo is going to go off and see Phyllis. Primo is probably going to go to the barbershop where. What's the name of the owner of the barbershop? I forget.
Alberto, the man who
Alberto,
looks like a fish.
He does. It's true. And they're sharing a moment, and Secundo's smoking a cigarette outside, and they're looking across the street at Pascal's restaurant. Who do you want to be, Secundo? I'll be Primo.
Okay. Next time I'm gonna be Primo because I enjoy Primo's accent quite a bit. But
are we gonna attempt accents? I don't know if we should.
I think so. So. Where are we starting here?
We're starting at the where Secundo says he's busy again tonight.
Okay. He's busy again tonight.
The man should be in prison for the food he served.
People love it. Okay. Good night.
Where you go?
To see Phyllis.
Oh, say hi for me.
Okay.
You go out?
Yeah.
Where?
Out to a movie.
Oh,
You want to come?
why? No, I go see Alberto.
Okay. Good night.
What is the movie?
Do you want to come? Come on.
No, I don't want to come.
Come on, call up the flower lady. Come see Chisma. What's her name? Anne? Anne, right? Double date.
Who? Why would I call her?
Oh, I don't know. Alberto said that you and she were...
What?
You know.
He said that?
Yeah. No secret. It takes you longer each time when you go to buy the flowers, so...
Well, I don't just grab any flower. I like to pick the right one.
Don't take too long. Someone else might pick the one you want. Ciao.
So what? How much is unsaid here?
Well, okay, so what is unsaid is their affection and banter for each other. And then also, well, unsaid is Primo's attraction to the flower lady, Anne. And I think the thing that's really, really important is we get this several times in sort of the opening third, which is the basic character sketch. Segundo is confident, comfortable, social, bantering, a joker. Primo is shy, and he is not very assertive. So even, does he want to go out with Segundo? I don't know. Maybe he does, but he's not going to ask. He's not going to hit on the flower lady. He's not going to really say what he wants. And I think all of that is happening. And also I think they're very comfortable with each other. And even though there's a little bit of annoyance, Secundo's like, why? Come on, just say what you want. If you want to come with me. But they clearly enjoy each other's company too. And they're very, very comfortable with one another. That's what I get. Do you get anything else?
Yeah, when I was watching this, I was like, oh my God. Like it really felt like watching, like a Harold Pinter play. A lot of pauses, not much actually said. Lots and lots of, and oh my God, the Stanley Tucci and Tony Shalhoub, when they do this, I think Stanley Tucci adds a third Anne.
Yeah.
The como se llama? And and they're almost talking over each other. And Tony Shalhoub says no back to him while he's or says who while he's still saying Anne. And it's like, it felt like a very serious Who's on First sketch, where the point is like not actually the stuff that's being said, but like so much underneath. You can actually see like Stanley Tucci does this thing where he realizes that he's teasing Primo a little bit, and there's this little wry smile when he starts talking about Anne.
Yeah.
And like this kind of text is so hard to write because it probably wouldn't occur to you to write it like this. And I just think that this really got me like back into like, I was like, oh, that's right. This movie is amazing.
And do you think, I mean, I gather that these actors had sort of worked together, like maybe they're part of kind of a New York theater scene, and because, you know, Tucci and Shalhoub in particular, but also Campbell Scott, who's the car salesman, and that's a scene I'm gonna talk about a little bit later. There's the one-on-ones of the acting is so utterly believable and comfortable that it just made me think, like, are these people part of a company? You know, are they a troupe of some kind, or have they improv together, or you know, do they go in? I mean, that's the other thing, is that often the script doesn't quite follow, or the film doesn't quite follow the script too. And I feel like probably what's happening is, you know, Tucci and Campbell Scott are the directors, and they're basically saying like, okay, here's what happens in this scene. You've read the lines, but you play it loose, right? You know, react, play it loose.
Yeah.
And even, you know, there's another one like that too, where Shalhoub as Primo is sort of when Secondo wants to take away risotto from the menu, and Primo pretends to agree, but he's like, yeah, take it away. We could he basically pretends to have a serious idea of what they're going to add. And Secondo comes over and he's like, oh, yeah, tell me. Because he's relieved that Primo agreed. Yeah. So he's like, okay, what's your idea? You know, like we've moved past the difficult part. And he's like, yeah, we could have one of those, manicotti? No, what do they call it? A hot dog. We could have you know, and he's just trolling him, right? He's just razzing him, and the timing of it is so great. I mean, it's Shalhoub is acting, Primo acting in that moment, and it's great, you know. And it's but there's a tremendous comfort that these actors have with this dialogue,
and that like pas de deux comes back on the beach when Primo is like, I called Paolo, we can go back to Rome, we have a job, and at first Secondo says, oh yeah, good. And and like even smiles and looks warm, and it's like, and it's heartbreaking because you remember the conversation about the risotto that just happened, you know, like last week. And it's another one of the resonances of this movie. I would love to go scene by scene and see if it is a palindrome, because like we pretty much end where we begin with that. Like this, it's the same camera angle of the shot of the kitchen. And like, I mean, there's just so many. It is so well put together. And the reason I brought up this text, and I think you're right that they are probably all used to working with each other, because like you can't really pull this off without that level of intimacy. I really think that this movie is about what is said and what is unsaid, and the things that are unsaid for the longest time are things like, I love you. And I care for you, and Phyllis sort of tries to pin him down about like where their relationship is going, and you kind of get the sense that Phyllis is just kind of horny, and is like kind of like just wants to make affection. Out with him.
I mean, she wants to be madly in love with him, and he doesn't know what he wants. I don't know that it's carnal so much as she can sense, I think, that there's some reticence, and it
something's
hurts her.
Off,
and
there's so much reticence in this movie. Like people just don't say to each other the things that I mean, the scene that you're talking about in the Cadillac, like Bob wants Secondo to buy a car, but that's not what that scene's about. It's about like so much other stuff, and And I think that the climax of the movie comes when things are finally set. When did you see this last? Like, when was the last time you saw this before you saw it this time?
I saw it for the first time about 2 or 3 years ago, actually, and that was the last time I saw it. Yeah.
Okay. Did you remember that this is the way that it ended?
Do you mean the one shot of the egg?
No, of just them not succeeding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember. I think so. I think I remember that Louis Prima never came. Yeah, no, I think I remembered it, and they had a marvelous night. But to your point, it definitely felt triumphant, and I think maybe this time around, I was sort of. That's why I asked you that first question, because I'm like, wait a minute, where's the triumph here? And so it might be. Yeah, I think I remember that he never came, but maybe I had this sense that like there was some promise that things were going to work out anyway, which there's not.
I know. Yeah, I spent the whole, like, I sort of knew, like you kind of know pretty soon that Louis Prima's never going to come.
Right.
Like, that's the structure of this movie, and I think that.
Well, and you never really trust Pascal. He always seems like he's whether he's lying or not. There always seems like there's something off about him too. I love that weird lamp that's obscuring his eye.
What was up with that? and then he pushes it down, and then the lamp is in the same orientation when we're looking at Secundo. I spent that whole scene being like, this is amazing. I was like, I don't quite understand it, but I think there's a reason it's here.
It's part of Secundo's discomfort with the whole conversation. I think it's sort of setting, and the entire time, like Pascal is so boisterous and like literally bites him on the ass at one moment. And
I was going to say, this is a man who's.
He's got something he wants here, so he has to be acting like everything is okay when it's clearly not. And I think the lamp is just part of that. And it's a power move, too.
Okay.
I think it's a power move. I mean, you notice that Pascal's desk is also up, elevated. And so that when Secundo's sitting in the couch, even though he's taller, than Pascal, he's diminished and he has to look up at him, and he's begging for money at that moment too. So I think it's just reinforced, but it's also just a weird texture. And I think there's a lot of that. I think the movie has a lot of just like, it's just in there to be memorable in a way, in the way that life is memorable, in the way that like, the guy who sold you the mint is going to just start lip syncing like the Mamba song, and everyone's going to do a conga line. That's just going to happen because that's what happens at moments of ecstasy like that. Things get weird and exuberant and specific.
Or like the way that the flashing pink light of their sign is like front. Such a prominent texture of the second half of the movie.
Especially when Gabrielle goes and helps Phyllis, who, is vomiting, and they have this, and I think Gabrielle is genuinely tender to her at that moment, even though she's the other woman and knows it and sort of pities her, but is also sort of jealous of her. There's this, I think her instinct is sort of very genuine, but I think that light it's reinforcing the kind of two-faced nature of Gabriella in that moment, that she is both kind and deceptive. So question for you. Okay, so, I mean, going back to what Monica said about foodie films, I'm curious, how much screen time do you think is actually devoted to the preparation of food in this movie?
What a great question. Okay.
And how does that compare with your memory of that or your expectation of that?
Interesting. The food preparation and serving coincides with moments of character illustration or of high emotion. So like the very first thing we see when Cristiano comes back from smoking a cigarette at the beginning is the two brothers cooking together and preparing food together.
Very rhythmic too. They you know, I feel like they've got good moves. And Tucci studied at a restaurant for like 6 months.
He still scrapes the cutting board with the sharp side of the knife, which you are not supposed to do.
See, I didn't catch that. You know, this is the value of having a real back of house cook on the upper middle brow roster. Okay, so
I understand why they did it, but yeah. To get back to your question,
yeah, so like.
So yeah, and then like I think a very important moment is when Primo is in the kitchen cooking for Anne and showing her a sauce, and he feeds her something. You're right that there are very few moments actually of actual food preparation. Maybe there is. The movie's about an hour and 50 minutes long. I maybe 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
10 minutes is my guess, and that includes like 3 minutes for the omelet at the end too, which happens in real time. But I think like if you look at Monica, like that's what Monica likes, is seeing those moments. I think in memory, those moments are very big, like making the timpano, cutting into the timpano, pulling the lid off the timpano and seeing it there, both perfect and imperfect at the same time. You know, the sort of rhythmic moment of both of them prepping at the same time. There's a moment where Secondo feels like maybe Primo is backed out and isn't going to help prepare the meal, and he kind of has this moment of like, okay, I guess I'm doing it. You know, I'm not the one you would want, but I'm the one we got. And then Primo comes in and kind of elbows him out of the way, and Secondo switches kind of into sous chef position, and there are a few other little moments like that. But yeah, I think it's probably under 10 minutes, and I think. Yeah. What it reminds me of, though, is that you get the sense of having immersed in the kitchen and in the food prep. What it really reminds me of, and I swear, listener, I didn't force this. This is literally what it occurred to me. We always talk about Star Wars, but we don't try to, is the Mos Eisley Cantina. So, you know, in the first Star Wars movie, you have this sense of you're in this universe full of droids and stormtroopers. Most of our characters are humanoid, except for the droids and Chewbacca. And yet we also know that this is a galaxy that has lots of interesting non-human extraterrestrials. And a lot of them are on, I think, maybe 2 minutes of screen time in the Mos Eisley Cantina, maybe 5 minutes. You see the walrus face guy and the werewolf guy and the devil guy and Greedo. And just that little moment, there's probably, again, less than 10 minutes of like weird extraterrestrials in Star Wars, but that's enough to create the sense of, oh, they're out there and they're everywhere and they're all around us. And this is a very, to our eyes, bizarre and exotic galaxy full of interesting extraterrestrials. And I think it's the same lesson that sometimes because the cooking moments are not necessary. They're important, but they're not dialogue. They're not character. They're not often things happening, except for that moment you were talking about where Anne tastes the sauce and says, "My God, my God," and also, not coincidentally, Primo puts his finger in her mouth, which is, it's intimate. It's an intimacy, especially for somebody as shy as he is. It's bringing them closer together. But I think it's like filmmakers take note. You can often suggest the bigness of your world and the texture with only little moments. And I think I noticed this in same thing in Babette's Feast as well. And even Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. I think there's, you see Chew cooking, but probably only for about 5 minutes the entire time, scoring the fish. And those cuts are very short. You see him deboning the catfish or the carp or whatever it is. And then you see him rolling the dumpling, but it's like probably 5 seconds here, 10 seconds here, 5 seconds here, and you got it. And you have this sense of a whole cornucopia of preparation. And I think that's really neat.
Yeah, in the same way that you never really get to know many of the guests.
Right, but there's a broad. They're intriguing. Like there's the black lady who's maybe some kind of singer, right? And then there's the painter who looks like Stephen Stills, like late life Stephen Stills, and then and the tall stately reporter, know, and they all you have this. It's kind of like Star Wars, and how terrible would it be if you were to give the tall reporter his own series? Yeah,
that would be a boring series. Yeah,
you liked him in Big Night. Don't you want to see his day-to-day life as a reporter? No, probably not. Probably not. It's the same thing. I think you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, this is one of those, incredibly economical films that manages to tell a really big story in a very small, compressed setting that doesn't do a lot of food stuff or other character developments. I mean, it really feels like it could have been a play, but you just couldn't pull off. You couldn't do this as a play. It just isn't going to work because you do need to see. You need to see the food the way that it is, even for the small amounts of time that we see it.
Yeah, no, you need to cut into the timpano, and you need the meatballs bisected, and the what is it, ziti bisected in front of you,
You need to see when they uncover the timpano, Cristiano reach for it, and Secundo sort of slap his hand, and then there's this amazing top-down shot. To it. As three hands creep into the frame and kind of caress the timpano. Yeah. And then they both get their heads down to it and they listen to it.
And Secondo kisses it.
Oh, it kisses it. And then one of them, and then Primo is like, it's too hot. And Secundo says, we have to serve now. And they begin to pull it. And Secundo's like, maybe it's too hot. And Primo's like, maybe it is too hot. We should stop. And Secundo's like, we have to serve. And it's just and it happens in less than a minute.
Yeah.
And it is marvelous. I mean, this is just this movie.
I want to do a reading.
Great.
And I didn't paste the script, although maybe I'll do a screen share so we can do it together. Okay. I think this time I would like to be Primo. So let me see if I can make this work as a screen share. So as I'm doing that, working on the screen share, this is very shortly after the reading you did. Sorry, I'm having trouble finding my Zoom window. Where is it? Where are too many windows? Not enough time. Okay, here's Zoom. There is reading. Share screen. Let's go with script. Okay, so you should see the script now. Do you see it?
I see the script.
Okay, so basically, what's happening now is this is the morning they're preparing for the big night, kind of. Not long after Pascal has made his offer, and they're in the car together. They've just purchased some fish. It's actually a little bit different in the movie. In the movie, you have Secondo complaining. But will you play Secondo and I'll play Primo, sure. And you can start with "I have a friend. Just listen."
Yeah. I have a friend. Just listen. Can get us a nice Barolo, cheap,
if you like.
Primo, please. What? Oh, Madonna Miseria. Why do you still continue to resist? Why? I need your help, huh? This is not just some guy. This is Louis Prima. He's famous.
Famous. Is he a good?
He's great.
People should come just for the food.
Oh, I know that.
They should come just for the food.
I know that. But they don't.
Scene.
That scene is it's the way Stanley Tucci does but they don't.
And there's the rub, right? And it's it's what you were saying last time or about the middle daughter in Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, that how many of us can relate to creating something that you love that is not appreciated in the world, and therefore, so you come up with something else that's related to make a living, and then you resent that.
Yeah.
And where do you find the balance? If you just do it Primo's way, the restaurant will tank. If you do it Secondo's way, what's the point of having a restaurant?
Mm-hmm.
And I just love how that's set up early on. I think I have to say, you and I are pretty good, but I think that Tony Shalhoub and Stanley Tucci played it a little bit better than you and I did.
They probably had a few more
though. We only had one take, and we didn't get to rehearse.
This is a cold fucking reading, man.
It was a cold read.
Yeah. I remembered how to pronounce Miseria.
Yeah, Madonna Miseria. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about this film, too, is they start speaking in Italian. They mostly speak in English because it's Secondo is more comfortable in English. But then when they have their fight, they're in Italian again, too.
And it's beautiful. The fight, the things they say to each other. You're rotten. This place is eating us alive.
And that anger is bursting out, like physically. You know, that whatever kind of acting they did to access that rage, you can see it in their, the way they paw at each other when they're fighting. There's I think to me the greatest moment was Tucci as Secondo when he says, "This place is eating you alive," and he says, "I don't care, I'm glad." And it's like the anger is bursting out of his body. It's like juddering with the frustration.
The fight choreography is incredible because it's one of the more realistic fights you will ever see in a film.
Yeah.
It is so wildly ineffectual.
Right.
Which is the way that most physical confrontations are,
especially with people who love each other too, where there's, they don't really want to hurt each other, but they also have to express this rage that's been building up that they've been suppressing all this time too. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I would love to talk with them about it. God. I'd be curious to hear, because it really feels like these characters were lived in a way. Like you could have, almost as though, like, I wonder if, I know that Campbell Scott and Stanley Tucci wrote the script and directed it. And I think that's also, to the point you were making earlier, I think the screenwriter would have to direct this kind of dialogue. Because I just don't, or have a really great mind meld with the director. Because I just don't think it's the thing you were saying about the things that are unsaid. The relationship between Primo and Secondo is so profound. I don't think you could entirely encapsulate it in dialogue and action. Yeah. I think that you need to kind of start with the character, and then you write the script that they're going to then play around. But it almost makes me wonder if Primo and Secondo existed as kind of like part of an improv or a play or a short, and I wonder if it was always Tony Shalhoub, since he so inhabits this role so brilliantly, or if there had ever been anyone else. Like, was the script written? Did they have the character before the script, or did they write the script and Shalhoub became the character? Either way, it's astounding.
Yeah. Can you describe the arcs of our two main characters? Where do they start and where do they finish?
Okay, yeah, tricky.
I know. That's a big one.
I think Primo's the easier one. So Primo starts... He is frustrated by the indignity of having to cook for people who don't appreciate his brilliance. He never leaves that. His brother takes him through a series of adventures, and in the course of his arc, he says to the world what he wants in two different ways that feel related. And one is, he says, basically he confesses his attraction and interest in Anne. And second, he confesses his anger to his brother. And at the end of it, he arrives, I'm not sure exactly, because we don't quite know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think that he has reached a point where he is no longer willing to compromise. So whatever path forward exists, it will not involve him working for Pascal, and it won't involve him making spaghetti as a side to risotto. ever again.
With a side of mashed potatoes.
With a side of mashed potatoes, even if it means going back to Italy. So I think that's primo. I think secondo is much more tricky. And actually, maybe I could kind of play you the audio that I had queued up as a way. I was gonna ask you a question about this, but it relates to your question. So let me do another screen share. So it's the big day before the big night, and Secondo's running errands, but he also is getting distracted. He gets distracted by Gabriella, who he sleeps with. And then as he's kind of... And I think maybe this is in the moment where he's got to wait a little bit for the cheap liquor guy, and he's got a little time to kill. He wanders by a Cadillac dealer, and he starts looking at the Cadillacs, and he's kind of, fondling them, and he hears this whistle. And then he becomes aware that there's a man sitting in the car next to him, watching him. And that's where the scene begins.
Are you in the market?
What?
Good-looking fellow like you should have a good-looking car like this.
Well, we all should have a lot we don't have.
I detect an accent. Where are you from?
I'm Italian.
Just visiting and move here for good?
I will never go back.
There's a history, huh?
In Italy, there is nothing but history.
Funny. Beautiful place, though, Italy.
Yes, it is. You been?
No, never. Here, get in.
Oh, well, I
Go
don't
ahead.
know. I really can't, but... Oh, boy. Wow.
Beautiful, huh?
Yes, this is, boy, beautiful.
Real leather trim, full air.
Yes. This is the new one. This is this year's car.
No, this is next year's.
Next year's? Wow, boy. This year you buy next year's car, and next year's come out already again.
Yeah. You got kids?
No.
I got 2 kids. They see their friend with a new toy, they gotta have it.
Yeah.
I got enough tension in my house, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm Bob. What's your name?
Secondo.
Pleasure.
What did you do to your...
I hurt my hand.
How?
I have no idea.
That must be difficult to, right?
What?
You know.
What do I need my hands for? Segundo, like second.
Yes.
Who's the first, your pop?
No, my brother.
Scoot over, scoot over.
Oh, well.
Come on.
Okay.
I have a younger brother. I hate his guts.
Why?
He's cheap.
But he's your brother.
Yeah, well, he's a person. I hate cheap people.
Me too.
Yeah, I could tell that. You have good taste, Segundo. Not that taste and money are related, but, it's really what you do with whatever you have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Power steering, power brakes.
Power.
Brother like cars, Segundo?
No, my brother, he does not even drive.
Well, some people prefer to walk.
I tell you, my brother make one ride from Italy to America. And I guess that's enough rides for him,
Let's take a test drive.
No. I have to go.
Come on, no commitment.
It's so good.
It is.
It's so
It's also...
good. God damn it.
Why is it there? Literally, what's Secondo doing? He's supposed to be, getting all the ingredients they need.
Well, this time listening to it, there's this moment when he's talking about the features, and he says power steering, power windows, and Secondo just under his breath goes, power. And that, I think, is why that scene is there. Bob is he's a good car salesman. He's very much a car salesman.
Oh, sure.
But he trades in power. That's, can I get this person to do the thing that I want them to do? And that is the thing that Secondo is going through with his brother. And somehow they end up talking about Primo, and Bob is talking. It's amazing. Bob is talking about the car, but really he's talking about Secondo, and Secondo is talking about the car, but he's really talking about Primo.
Yeah.
And it's just this is a thing that you could write after you've lived in the movies and in plays for like 2 decades.
Yeah. And also, I don't know what Tucci and Campbell Scott's relationship is exactly. Obviously, they must have been close because they wrote the script together. But it also has you have the sense of like 2 actors who have improv'd. Like, I almost felt like they improv that scene. It had that feeling too, even though it's probably scripted.
What happened to your hand? No idea.
No idea. Yeah, exactly. What do I need my hand for? It must be out. And then like also like, is this next year's car? No, it's next year's. Oh, but then by next year, I have next year's car, but already they are having the year after that car or whatever he says, which is just this like extraordinary. But I guess the reason I played it as an answer to your question is that at some point somebody says to Secondo, you don't know what you want. And I think that is kind of Secondo's arc, is kind of figuring out what is most important, because actually he wants more than is possible. He wants both things, right? He wants his relationship with his brother to be good. He wants his American girlfriend Phyllis, but he also wants Gabriella, the Italian, sensual girl. And even he won't have sex with Phyllis because he's got maybe some idea around purity, but he will with Gabriella. And he wants what Pascal has, like a successful restaurant and power, but he doesn't want to compromise the way that Pascal is, although he's willing to do it a little bit. And so to me, part of what's happening is it's sort of like he's walking through a garden of temptations and he's being tempted by these different things. And so that when we finally get to the big night, the other feature of the big night is that Secondo doesn't ever really enjoy it. Everybody's having a great time. It doesn't matter that Louis Prima's not there. And even Primo is having a great time, and he gets everybody to play the game with the ring, and he's hitting on Anne, and they're having a great time. And Secondo can't enjoy it because he wants more than the world is going to provide for him. And I think maybe his arc is finally realizing that his wants are in conflict, and that in the end, he can't get everything he needs, but his relationship with his brother and his brother's mastery is too important to compromise. And that's why he stands up to Pascal and says, my brother's never going to work for you. He has something that's rare and you will never have it. You're common. And why they're huddling at the end, they're hugging each other, sort of side hugging, and as if to say, okay, we're going to lose this restaurant, but we have something more important.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Secondo ends. And it's incredibly painful, and he loses Phyllis along the way. And so it's hard earned, but I think that's his arc.
Yeah, I like that answer. I think that's a good one. You ready to go trivia?
Yeah. So trivia. Stanley Tucci, I heard an interview with him recently, and he described a culinary catastrophe at a family gathering, a time he was cooking for his family, kind of a medium big night, right? He wanted to impress his extended family. And he comes from an Italian family. They're obsessed with food. He wants to impress them, and something went terribly wrong. Not life-alteringly wrong, but, it was an embarrassment. So was this catastrophe A, he mixed a pitcher of Negronis, but he accidentally used cherry liqueur instead of Campari, which is a bitters. And he says it tasted like Sucret's cough drops with a hint of gin, without the bitter.
Gross.
So that's A. B, he was making a timpano, much like the timpano the brothers make in this movie, and it collapsed, and he said it looked like Mount St. Helens after the eruption. Or C, he was making a marinara sauce, but he accidentally substituted fresh mint that he had prepped for another dish for fresh basil in the simmering phase, and so he simmered his marinara in fresh peppermint for like an hour, and he said he had a flavor that was something almost like gazpacho, but not nearly as good.
Pasta Tucci.
Pasta Tucci. Con gazpacho.
Let's see. I'm gonna go with B because I know that a timbalo is a recipe that the Tucci family made. And so that's my answer.
Well, yeah, it's actually timpano, but yes, B is correct. He made
They're called timbalos.
Oh, really?
That is the actual name of it. Is a timbalo. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, did you know that
Timbalo.
his production company is Timpano Productions? Did you see that?
Yes, yeah, I love that when I saw that when I saw the bumper at the beginning. Hooray! Yes.
Hooray. No, and
I did not see that answer, but I did know that he's a cook, and I was like, I know that he's at least attempted those before.
Yeah, I'm gonna try one. I think.
Let's do it together.
Yeah.
I'll drive down to LA and we'll try to make a
let's do it.
timbalo.
Let's make
a timpano. Yeah,
whatever it is. Yeah, let's make it. I've seen some that have a kind of pastry shell, but clearly the one they made in the movie had a cheese shell, and I want to make the one they made in the movie, which is basically cheese shell. It does have flour holding it together, and then clearly it has ziti and meatballs inside too, and probably some other stuff too. But yeah.
Oh my
all
God.
right,
and eggs and oh god, yeah, that'd be so good. It's like the it feels like the Italian version of like a cassoulet, where you're like, oh my god, this is going to take like 3 days to make, and the important part is the crust.
It also reminds me of, like, every now and again I'll get fed a video on Facebook or YouTube that's like, somebody took Snickers and then chopped them up and then covered them in caramel and then bathed them in cornflakes and then rolled all that up and baked it and sliced it and then covered that in marshmallow like these terrible sort of Midwestern creations, and then used that as a batter for fried chicken, and then cooked the chicken and then stripped it, put it on a pizza and added bacon to it and then rolled it all up and deep fried it. You know, it's
like a culinary game of telephone.
Yeah, or Exquisite Corpse culinary.
Yeah, there you go. That's a better culinary Exquisite Corpse. Wouldn't that be great if you just like, how would you do that? You would like cook something and then like you would like hand it to somebody like through like a cardboard box.
I think it would be easier to just to write
like,
the recipe, and you can only see the step before it, and then you have to follow the recipe.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's another one that we should try.
That would be terrible and great.
Yeah. Okay, so Phyllis, played brilliantly by Minnie Driver, was almost played by what other 1990s actor?
Ooh.
A, Sarah Jessica Parker. B, Mary Louise Parker. Or C, Parker Posey.
I don't know, but I'm going to guess Parker Posey because I like her a lot, and she did appear in a lot of independent films in this era. So I'm going with C.
It was B, Mary Louise Parker.
I can't picture her. I remember that name.
She garnered like, I mean, eventually like widespread fame for playing Nancy Botkin in Weeds, but she's also been in tons. And I think, you know, she's probably around the same age as Minnie Driver. Maybe Minnie Driver's a little younger than she is. I think they made the right choice.
Does Minnie Driver, she's brilliant in this movie, and she's brilliant in Good Will Hunting, and she's brilliant in Grosse Pointe Blank, but it made me feel like, does Minnie Driver always play the object of the protagonist's admiration? Like, does she ever get to be a protagonist? Because I feel indignant on her behalf. If not,
that's a great question. I don't know.
Damn it! Make a movie where Minnie Driver is the protagonist. Hollywood, world,
make it happen.
Women don't just exist for men to aspire to.
Yeah. Well, are you going to watch this again?
Yes. I'll watch it every few years. It was better than I remember, and I remember it being very good. We didn't talk about this, but one of the things that was extraordinary was the mobile camera. And maybe why I didn't remember it is I remembered the locked camera for the one takes at the beginning and the end of the restaurant. It's not entirely locked. It actually raises itself up a little bit.
Yeah, it drifts a little bit.
It's a little bit, but the camera is incredibly mobile, and there's some really wonderful, weird cinematography, like in Pascal's bar the first time, where the camera does like a loop to loop or something like that, and I mean, and also the lighting design, the reds and the vividness. I remember it being a kind of like well acted but sort of workaday filmed movie. No, it is well acted and brilliantly filmed. And again, like Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, all the more brilliant for being obviously on film.
Oh God, so beautiful, so beautiful.
So what about you? Are you gonna watch it again?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I mean, I've got it rented. I've got it rented from Amazon for another 24 hours. So like, yes, I'm going to watch it again tonight. Yeah, it was also better than I remembered. Yeah, it's an extraordinary movie.
Well, listener.
Well,
listener, I'm going to do 2 what's next because I'm not entirely sure, but we are actually done with our official foodie films, but we have a bonus foodie film, which is going to be a live episode. I think the live episode will have happened by the time this episode comes out, so I won't plug it. But you should plug it in.
But it was great.
Martha.
It was amazing.
You should listen to it.
It was great. We had such a good time. It was so awesome.
Great questions.
We're so glad you were all there. All the hundreds of you.
Stanley Tucci showed up in the chat, in the Zoom. It was amazing. as did Ian Holm. It was incredible. It was really, really fun. Somebody gave us $1,000 to sing Barbershop Harmony with a 7th. It was great. Paid for our Google subscription.
Paid for our hosting for the year.
For the year. What's next, listener, is one of our digression episodes with the writer Josh Moore. Really fascinating writer. So look for that. That's coming up soon. Thank you for listening. Once again, we have a listener survey on our website. Please fill it out. We're going to keep talking about it until we get enough. We'll enter you in a drawing to win a storied Bluetooth speaker, perfect for listening to Upper Middlebrow. Go to uppermiddlebrow.com for the link to the survey. Upper Middlebrow is a Small Point production. Chris Bagg and Jesse Dukes are primo and secondo, but don't ask us who is which. Music by Ben Pajak and Jesse Dukes. Design and website by Chris Bagg. You can learn more about us at uppermiddlebrow.com.
And as a reminder, Jesse and I are both writers and editors, and we can help you with your writing, podcasting, or editing project. You can see some of our portfolios and learn more at our respective websites, chrisbagg.com and jessedukes.com. Check it out and get in touch if you want to talk about how we can help you with your project, big or small. I kind of think I'm primo because I'm grumpier.
I don't know if you're grumpier. I can be quite grumpy.
That's true.
We both have facial hair right now. Yeah, I don't know. Who's the public face? I think I feel like we switch roles. I think we do. I feel like sometimes I'm the secondo and you're the primo, and sometimes I'm the primo and you're the secondo, which is a good way to be.
That is a good way to be.
Well, everybody go cook something ambitious.
See you, everybody. Go watch Big Night.
Go watch Big Night.